Okay, welcome. My name's Gordon Young. I'm a lead trainer at the Institute of Applied Psychology. And if you're on this webinar, I'm assuming that you've got an interest in hypnotherapy. Today's topic is dealing with procrastination using hypnotherapy. So let's begin. So a little bit about me. Obviously, if you're listening to me, it's important that you know why I'm even talking to you and why you should listen to me. I've been in the field for 15 years full-time. I've been the president of a couple of different associations. I'm a clinical supervisor for a number of them as well. I'm also the former editor of the Australian Journal of Clinical Hypnotherapy and Hypnosis, the only peer-reviewed journal of its type in Australia. I've published articles and various other writings on the subject. And probably the biggest variance between myself and most people in this field is that I did a good deal of my training at the Milton Erickson Foundation in Phoenix, Arizona. That means my training is very different from most people in this country. You must have a master's degree to even get access to that facility. It's considered the pinnacle of hypnosis training in the world. In fact, one could argue it's considered the pinnacle of all psychotherapy training in the world. And since then, I've been invited back as a faculty member for online conferences endorsed by that same foundation. The other thing that you should probably know is that I was also chosen as one of Australia's 100 leaders. So in this field, the study, which was the largest study on leadership in this country thus far, the people running it selected me as what they deemed to be the leader in the field. Now, I'd also like to, at this stage, introduce you to Cromwell. Cromwell will be running the tech in the background.
Hello.
And Cromwell will be taking questions at the end, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Firstly, welcome everybody to this wonderful hypnotherapy webinar in the Institute of Applied Psychology. I want you to sit back, relax, enjoy the webinar, and in the end, there'll be an opportunity for us to actually, you can ask questions, as many questions as you want. Anyway, over to you, Nara. I'm Gordon.
Okay. So the question we're posing tonight is, how does modern hypnotherapy deal with procrastination? As a therapist, procrastination is actually a topic area that's going to come for your door pretty consistently. And so I want to give you a bit of a heads up, because the way I would do it and the way I teach people to do it is very different from most approaches to procrastination. So let's look at that. So what does procrastination look like? Well, most people who procrastinate have a tendency to be driven by consequence. Unless the consequence, the risk, is clear and present, they don't tend to act. So they wait till the last night before they have to hand in the assessment and do an all-nighter. If you're guilty of that, I was too, during your university degree or various other education, then you're running procrastination. In many cases, I had the assessment for 3 months prior, but I ended up doing it the night before. Why? Because you hit a point where the feelings about not being able to hand it in outweigh the feelings of having to do it. So you may be struggling to get yourself to a point where you want to do it, but the feelings of not being able to hand it in, the consequences thereof, actually gets you over the line. Procrastination leads to a lot of indecision. There's a number of reasons why people get indecisive. A huge part of it often is they're looking for information that's not always available in that moment. So if you're always looking for the information that says it will be okay in the end, and you want that information before you even pursue an option, typically that information is not available in the here and now. So the truth is, if you have a desperate need to make sure everything's going to be okay, before you take that leap of faith, then you're probably not going to take too many chances in your life. And that will lead you to a fairly limited experience of life. There'll be a lot of opportunities that will just go past you. So procrastination and indecision can really have an effect on the size, the gravity, the scope of your life. Then there's all the justifications we typically run. So excuses, denial. We often don't like the idea that we are ourselves at fault and that we're struggling with things. Typically what we want to do is allocate blame somewhere else. So we talk about other factors getting in the way. Unfortunately, when we keep blaming factors outside of ourselves, we actually limit our capacity to do something about it. It's also time wasting. And for me, the more someone leans towards procrastination, the more they're likely to live a life where they've just wasted enormous amounts of time and potentially run regret at the end of their life. The idea that they could have been someone or they could have achieved so much more if only things had aligned, if only someone had supported them, and no matter what, there'll be an excuse. But here's the thing. Your life is the time you spend on this planet. When you waste your time, you waste your life. And none of us is promised a tomorrow. So one of the big costs of procrastination is a life half-lived. Sometimes I think the great shame is not that people pass away. The great shame is that people don't truly live. And the other aspect of that is that people develop a sense that they're not really in control of themselves. And that's also a disappointing and debilitating view of themselves, that they can't make themselves do anything. That, you know, if they're not feeling like it, there's nothing much they can do. And then that also develops a sense of self that doesn't serve. And of course, the ultimate outcome of all this is just really it being quite ineffective. And then, of course, you can put a lot of effort into all sorts of things, but really not get much result. So it's not down to your talent or your intelligence. None of that has anything to do with it. It's all about your unconscious processes that you run. All of this comes down to unconscious process. Now, not all hypnotherapy is the same. Something to highlight to you. It's not all the same. There is traditional authoritarian hypnosis, which is very much the old stage type stuff and still very big in Australia as far as the therapy goes, very much telling you what to do. Then there's modern Ericksonian hypnosis, which is less well known in Australia. And then there's what we do, which is a neo-Ericksonian variant, which is post-Milton Erickson. And it's called strategic hypnosis. So it's much more aligned and has been developed along with the most recent, most advanced forms of psychotherapy. So how does hypnosis work? Well, ultimately, you have two main parts of your brain. There's a logical, critical analysis side of it, which is the neocortex, the outer layer. And then we have what's called the limbic brain, or the mammalian brain, reptilian brain. This part of your brain sends messages to you through its emotions. It's where we run our beliefs, our values, our memories, our habits. This is your unconscious mind, your entire operating system, the way you digest food, the way you grow your fingernails. All this stuff is outside of your conscious awareness. That part of our brain has the capacity to influence us, but doesn't have the capacity for speech. So that, a lot of people think that this is in fact the unconscious mind. Now, as you're listening to me and the way you're talking to yourself, analyzing what I'm saying, that's your conscious process. That's what you're aware of. But at the unconscious process, you're making assessment of me and what I'm saying based on all of your conditioning. So let's look at traditional hypnosis. How would they approach procrastination? Well, they have a very much a Freudian approach to it. Very much about past orientation. So they go back in the past maybe and they look for, what was the first time you procrastinated, and was that a significant emotional event of some kind? They'd also be very directive and just tell you to stop it and tell you just got to get going and you will make it happen from now on. They'll tend to be scripted. So if you go to a traditional hypnotherapist, they'll tend to read you a script. They've either downloaded off the internet or they've found somewhere else. And they'll tend to read different scripts maybe sometimes according to who's coming through the door, but a lot of time, in my experience, they'll read the script that they kind of like the most at this point in time. Now, I was originally trained in traditional hypnosis because it's the only form of hypnotherapy you could get here in Australia. To a large degree, it still is. And then I decided to go overseas and get the modern forms. The other thing about the traditional approach is a lot of it can be quite good, feel-good therapy. So that means, putting you in a calm blue ocean, getting you to, lie in a forest and look at the canopy. So a lot of guided visualization, that sort of stuff. One of the problems with all this, though, is it has an inbuilt failure rate. If I'm going to script something for you, if the script doesn't resonate for you, it's not going to work. So a lot of traditional hypnotherapists report to me that their success rate is something in the order of about 30 to 40%. Now, I wouldn't be happy with a 30 or 40% success rate. If I can't get you over 90%, assuming you as a client turn up to every meeting, you do your homework, you come with me, I expect over 90% success rate. In fact, if you do everything I ask, I would expect 100% success rate. So it's a very different expectation, but I know that the model I've managed to get hold of, the one I feel very privileged to have learned, is so predictable that the outcomes are only a matter of time, and they just depend on whether you buy in as a client and whether you do what I ask you to do. So how do you do procrastination? Well, here's the thing. Procrastination doesn't happen to you. It's not a thing. It's a process you run. There's no such thing as procrastination. It's not a noun. It's not an object. It's a verb. You have to do it. So our strategic approach would look at it in a very different way. We want to ask these basic questions. How does the client create and maintain the problem? How do they do that? What cognitive behavioral skills does the client lack? So the reason why people do procrastination is because there are skills gaps in their understanding of how they run themselves. You have developed skills over time, your ability to compartmentalize, your ability to stop thinking something that doesn't work for you, your ability to let something go or work out who you can trust are all skills. What does a client not know that gets in their way? And how do we access or develop those skills? So you might have those skills in another part of your life where you don't tend to procrastinate. Or you may not have them at all, in which case I, as a hypnotherapist, have to install them hypnotically. So the type of hypnotherapy I do is very much about skill building. Traditional hypnosis is more interruption. How do we just interrupt what you're doing and tell you to do something else? But this is about building the skills so you can activate them yourself more often. It's a much more advanced form or approach in my view. So how do we do it? Well, this is what you're doing in order to procrastinate. First of all, you'd be running avoidance. So what is that? When you tend to run avoidance, it means that you have a low tolerance for ambiguity. That's the term in the literature. That means you don't like the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen, and you don't like it because you tend to catastrophize into it. You tend to assume things are going to go bad. So when you're avoidant, whenever a problem comes up or something that's going to be challenging that comes up, you want to find a way of delaying it or stepping around it. So the more you lean towards avoidance, the more likely you are to run procrastination. And what will you be scared of in that unknowns? It might be rejection, it might be failure, it might be just not being able to do it the way you want, bad feelings, feelings of inadequacy. The range will vary, but in essence, it will all come down to avoidance. In other words, there's a problem right in front of me, so I turn my head and face the other way. Denial ain't just a river in Egypt, according to Mark Twain. The second piece is you have a lack of process. So everything we do has a process to it. There are steps that you need to take. If you're having a shower in the morning, there are certain steps you need to take. Now, everyone's going to do it slightly differently, but in the end, there'll be another number of steps you have to take to make that whole process work. Well, when you're procrastinating about something, one of the possibilities is that you don't know what the next steps are, or the next steps are uninviting in some way. So you may not know what the next step is. Or you know what the next step is, but you don't like it. Or you know what the next step is, but it's going to cost you too much. Or you don't see the long-term benefit. The way to get stuck is to find problems with the next steps coming up. Sometimes the very first step is the most challenging, and it's not the step you need to take to make the activity come alive. Right? It's not an external step. It's not like, putting a key in the door. The first step sometimes is that you have to take an action despite the fact you don't feel like it. And if you can't bring yourself to take an action despite the fact that you don't feel like it, then your feelings will tend to trip you up. And the more you have an avoidance of discomfort, the more your feelings will trip you up. So if you lean towards perfectionism, you probably will have quite a high avoidance of discomfort. So, and again, I come back to this idea that if it's rejection or failure or looking like you don't know what you're doing, whatever that discomfort would be, the more you feel discomfort and the more you don't tolerate it, then the more you will listen to those feelings that pull you up. So that's one of the biggest issues people are going to have when they're procrastinating. They know they should, but they can't bring themselves to. And of course, that leads me down the path of recognizing that this is very much a strong present orientation problem. When you're procrastinating, you're not really thinking about the future in any positive way. You're thinking about the future in a way where you're catastrophizing, how it's going to feel so awkward and unpleasant to have to go and do that. And so you avoid all those feelings. The answer to that, of course, is you start to think about the future where you've taken the action and you've got the outcome, and what will it feel like when you've got the result? So you want to pull yourself out of the present orientation and into a future orientation. The other thing people typically do is they'll create themselves overwhelmed. So overwhelm for a lot of people is there's just too much to do. That's not the problem. The real issue of overwhelm is that they believe there's too much to do. The actual amount of work they've got to do, or the difficulty of the work, or the technical nature of the work, whatever the sense of overwhelm is completely arbitrary. It has nothing to do with reality. It has everything to do with the moment you say, oh, it's too much. And the way you do that is you take an activity and you make it big. The answer to it, the antidote to that is break it down into small steps. Work out what you can do first. What small step can I take right now to just get a start? Okay. The next piece is self-labeling, and this is a consequence of doing a lot of procrastination over a period of time. What people tend to do is they can't work out why they can't get themselves moving. And then they start labeling themselves as lazy or a procrastinator, so they start to identify with even the term procrastinator. They start to tell themselves that they're weak-minded or they're slow, or they'll limit themselves somehow. The danger with that self-labeling is you tend to live out that reality. You don't tend to go for anything significant because, after all, you have this lifelong history of not getting what you want and not pursuing and starting things but never finishing. And then this can be reinforced by accusations of something called secondary gain. So secondary gain is largely a Freudian concept, and that is that people have problems because it gives them a benefit. I think that principle does exist, but I think it's way overused. You're not depressed because it gives you the benefit of not having to do the housework. Depressed people kill themselves. That's not because it just makes it easier. It's not a gain. The truth is, people just don't know how to make themselves do something. If I don't believe I'm in control of myself, if all I get is feelings that I don't seem to be able to step away from, then I don't have the skill set to action anything because I am overwhelmed by feelings that just don't serve me. You know, to someone who doesn't have those feelings, it can look like they're just being lazy, or they just like being depressed, or like achieving nothing. But that's not the case. They just don't know how to do it. There is a gap in their skill set. Now, I'm not saying that all secondary gain doesn't exist. I think there are moments when it does, but it's not my first port of call. I'm going to find out, what do you not know how to do? And I come back to the second point. If I don't know how to act, whether I feel like it or not, then I'll never achieve very much in my life. The most successful people on the planet will take action whether they feel like it or not. They're not going to wait until they feel confident they can do it, because the truth is, there's no reason why you should feel confident you can do something that you've never done before. One of the ways you ramp that problem up is if you have got into the habit of believing that thinking about something equates to doing something about a problem, then you'll lean down the pathway of overanalysis. So there's a distinction between useful analysis around a problem and overanalysis. Overanalysis is where you just keep looping around and you don't actually get to an outcome of any kind. Now, most people in the Western world lean towards overanalysis because we don't know how much is useful and how much isn't. That will lead you down the pathway of anxiety and or depression. Right? You have to run overanalysis in order to run anxiety. You can't do it any other way. So it loads up your problems. Self-esteem is going to be loaded up by the fact that you run a lot of procrastination, because when you say to yourself, I'm going to go and do this or go and do that, party brain says, no, you won't. You stop trusting yourself, and then you start to have a negative view of yourself. Just the way you do if you have a friend and they keep cancelling every time you organise something, you get to the point where you just don't think they're ever going to honour anything, so you don't bother. You do that to yourself as well. So as a hypnotherapist, there's a number of targets I'm going to go after, and it's different forms of cognition. I need to help you make a better decision. I need to help you change the way you perceive the world and the way you perceive yourself. I need to put you back in charge, because no one else is in charge of you. No feeling, no thought, no circumstance determines you. Only you do. And that's something that most people don't really truly acknowledge. No one else runs your mind. You might talk about an unconscious mind, but it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as an unconscious mind. It's just a generic term we use. to explain unconscious processes, things outside of our conscious awareness, but there's no place called the unconscious mind. So when we take people into a trance, we get them away from their logic, but we get them into a space where, for whatever reason, and we just don't quite know how this works yet, neuroscience is working on finding it out, but we don't know exactly how it happens. But when we speak to you in that trance state, you're far more likely to take on board information, suggestion that we're offering than you would in a normal conversation. In a normal conversation, it's the bane of the existence for almost every therapist is they make a suggestion and the client says, oh yeah, but you don't understand, and we'll fob it off. In hypnosis, the client doesn't tend to do that. The client, if it's a useful suggestion, will say, yeah, why can't I do that? It'll seem more obvious to them. So hypnosis is one of the best tools for dealing with things like procrastination. So, questions, thoughts, or deep and penetrating insights?
All right, let me just look at the Q&A here. Okay. We got a question from Peter. Are there any positive aspects to procrastination? Any at all?
Well, look, there are times when just heading, head first into a problem it doesn't serve. So waiting sometimes to see what will happen, there are times when that's an appropriate thing to do. I think the truth is procrastination is like everything else. Nothing's universally good or bad. If you procrastinate, sometimes something better might just come up. But a lot of the time, procrastination is a problem because you just can't make an action. And the truth is, the world doesn't respond to your thoughts. It responds to your actions. You have no impact on the world if you don't tend to act. And for some people, it's almost debilitating. So I never ever want to say that anything is universally a bad thing. Optimism is often seen as a good thing. There are times when being an optimist is not a good idea. I can tell you now, if you're a gambler, the first thing I'm going to knock out of you is your optimism, because you keep believing that you're going to win big. In fact, almost every gambler's got the same strategy for getting out of debt, and that is to win big. That is the first thing I'm going to challenge. So there are times when procrastination might work for you. I'm going to say the majority of the time, it's not. What else, Colin?
Another question here. Just looking at this one. We have Karen asking, is there any positive aspect of being a perfectionist?
Absolutely. Right? Perfectionism is a continuum. And I think if you can run perfectionism, that's a great skill to have. It's about being precise. It's about being effective. It's about being determined to make things happen. If you're working for me, I'd love you to be a perfectionist. But there are times when you can overdo it. And if you're running perfectionism at a level where you get to the point where you don't even want to try something new, or you don't even want to take an action because you can't quite do it the way you want, or you just don't know enough about it, you could lean towards getting to the point where you actually underperform because your perfectionism gets in the way, because you don't want to try something new. You don't want to move to the next level because you'll be discovered, or because you're just, you're marking yourself so hard where you are. Moving to the next level is just going to be too much. So perfectionism has its place. If you're going to be my surgeon, I want you to be a perfectionist. If we're going to make a salad together, I will stab you with a fork if you're going to tell me that I've got to cut the lettuce on a 47-degree angle. So the problem is the perfectionist, and we do this with everything that's strong in us. We try and use it everywhere. You don't want a scorecard on every single thing you do in every aspect of your life. There are some elements of your life where near enough is good enough, and that's all you need to do. And there's others where your perfectionism is going to be the reason that makes you highly effective in areas where other people aren't. So it's useful except when it's not.
And one more question here from Daniel, which is an interesting one, which is funny actually.
Yeah.
They say, is procrastination an art form?
Is it an art form? Well, the irony of it is that an art form usually requires process, and you do have to run a process to procrastinate. Is an art form. Usually an art form, again, you have to take action. So there are some people who do it so consistently that their whole life amounts to a heap of beans. And that's a great shame. Their talents get squandered and nothing much happens in their lives, and they can't work out why. They often start to revert to these ideas of, other people being effective, other people around them doing well. That's all about luck. It's not about luck. Successful people keep doing things that are useful, and people who procrastinate a lot end up doing relatively little in their lives. And, I've seen it many times when you hit 40, 50, 60, and you've not amounted to much. The world doesn't reward you for that. When you're younger, you can get by, and it doesn't matter if you've got anything in your bank, it doesn't matter. But when you get older and you've not really achieved financially or in any other area of your life significantly, the world does not reward you for that. And, ultimately there's that same emotional piece. I'm actually more concerned with the way it changes your own view of yourself. That's the trip up point. That's what I watch is people get quite scathing of themselves. They can develop a self-loathing that they're just useless and pathetic and a waste of space. And this is not healthy. It's not healthy that it gets to that point. But if you run high levels of procrastination for long enough, you're going to get there. And it's not warranted. It's not useful. So, of course, here's the reality. If someone comes to see me in my clinic to move procrastination, for them it's a problem. If you don't think procrastination is a problem for you, then you're not going to come and visit me. And by the way, even if your partner thinks it's a problem for you and you don't, you're still not going to come and visit me. So it's only a problem if you decide it's a problem. That's the reality of it. Yeah. But we have the tools to help you move if that's what you want to do. How's that, Crom?
That sounds good. And last question of the day, of the
night, because it's really interesting. It's from Charlene. Do you see a link between procrastination and something like OCD, as you spoke about the lack of ability to deal with uncertainty? That's from Charlene.
Yes, I do. So it all comes through in that increasing anyone who runs high levels of anxiety. I think you can procrastinate without being leaning towards OCD. Of course you can. If you just don't know what you're going to do, if you have no idea how to set up a website, then you might take months to even get going because you've got no starting point. You don't know what to do, who to talk to. It's ambiguous. So most of us don't like ambiguity because it's an area where we're showing that we're weak. Wherever we're strong, we actually know the steps. We know what to do. But we don't when it's a new area of expertise. So you can procrastinate without going down the path of perfectionism. There were just different options you could take or different options that you see sometimes. But perfectionism and OCD, absolutely. That's just an more extreme version of anxiety and OCD. If you're running that pattern, your tolerance for uncertainty is very low. So you're constantly looking at how you can control the situation when the truth is you can't. And the more you try and control what you can't, the more you take responsibility for things you can't, and that only loads you up even further. It's the fast track to anxiety. So yeah, high levels of anxiety is going to lead to things like OCD. And if you go to a lot of therapists, they'll say OCD is going to be your lifelong problem. I don't believe that to be true. I believe, and I, it's not even belief, I know from the work I've done, OCD can be resolved. For most people that I've seen, OCD is something that can be knocked out in half a dozen sessions. It is harder. It takes a little bit more because you've got to get through a lot of very strong views that the person has. But it can be resolved. So I see a greater link between high levels of anxiety and OCD. But if you are procrastinating because you just never want to get it wrong, or you're just so frightened of getting a failure or rejection, then yeah, OCD and procrastination could well be linked. But you don't have to be there to procrastinate, obviously.
Okay. We have a request here. I don't know if we have time. Can you explain or demonstrate how hypnosis can knock out procrastination?
Well, no, not really. I can't do it. It's a process, right? Yeah. You would tackle each of those cognitive distortions people are running. You need to take people out of the procrastination piece, out of the perfectionism piece, and teach them and hypnotically suggest to them that they only use the perfectionism when it's useful, which might be in the workplace, or we tone it down a few percentage points. Hypnotically, I would highlight or make a distinction for you between what you control and what you don't. Most people have no real idea of what they control and what they don't. Intellectually, we all do, but at the emotional level, we don't. So, for instance, I don't control anything outside of me. I don't control what you guys are thinking, what you're saying to yourself, what you say to someone else about what we've done. But I do control most things inside of me. And not every random thought, because we all have random thoughts that you have no idea where they come from. But the thoughts that I continually give airtime to, I do decide. And most people don't believe that to be true. They have never developed a skill set to listen to a thought and pay it no attention. And here's the thing. The pivot point of our lives is determined by which thoughts and feelings we pay attention to and which ones we simply ignore. We have something like 60,000 thoughts a day. Don't ask me how they work that out, but let's just put it as lots. And ultimately, if we listen to certain thoughts regularly, then our behavior will follow. So the more you can step back from your thoughts, which is something that I would teach you to do hypnotically, step back from your thoughts and ask yourself, is this useful? Is it valid? To be able to be the witness to your own thoughts rather than be in your own thoughts at the time, then that's going to give you choice in a way that most people on the planet never experience. I expect you to leave a hypnotic session with me or, my training, a much wiser person than most people on the planet, because you'll have an understanding of yourself that most people will never, ever attain. So the answers are actually outside of what most people's understanding is, but they're more than possible. It's just a case of we have to teach you how to do that. There's no point saying you're in charge if you don't know how to do that. That's not being very fair or very kind. Telling you you're in charge, but I can't show you how to do it, isn't terribly useful. But I can show you how to do it. And it starts off with giving you the distinction first. If you don't have the distinction, then you'll see yourself as responsible for things all around you. I get mothers who have a son who's 35 thinking he's making terrible decisions, and they're saying, I must be a really bad mother. No, he's 35. He's making his own decisions. You don't have that much influence there. That's not your responsibility. He's got responsibility for his actions. You know, when did your mother stop being responsible for your decisions? You know, it wasn't at 35. So people often get confused. As obvious it might seem intellectually what we control, emotionally we get that messed up. So there's a big starting point right there. So if you want to know more about either doing hypnosis with our clinic, Sydney Hypnotherapists, or even learning to become a hypnotherapist, then you can contact us on this number, 1300 380 681. I will tell you now that there is a desperate need for good, well-trained hypnotherapists. It's a growing field, and there are very few of us out there. So if it's of interest to you, then talk to us about it. You know, come to an intro day, come sit in on a class. We give you lots of options. You know, we want it to be transparent. We want you to make a decision that's well informed, because this is a new career possibility, and we want you to start, work all the way through it, and we want to see you successful. You know, what I would love is to be able to welcome you as a colleague into the field, and for you and us together to be looking to revolutionize the field, because there is no one else teaching this modern, advanced form of hypnosis in Australia. It may be well established overseas, but it's not established here. And you'll be among the first practitioners of it if you come and train with us. So I hope that was useful. I hope you got something out of it. And I hope that we'll speak again sometime soon.